Okay. Just so you know, we are recording and the talk will be available soon. When we're done, we'll get it up on our YouTube channel. We want to thank you all very much for joining us this evening for our talk with Melissa Dallal and Cade Tompkins of Cade Tompkins Projects, who are the curatorial team behind the art collections at Memorial Sloan Kettering's latest buildings. This is our fourth talk of the year. We are planning others, so be sure to visit our website at manhattangraphiccenter.org so you can register for them. And while you're there, you'll be able to sign up for our mailing list and see our other events and course offerings. Our summer term is just underway, and there are some really exciting upcoming course offerings that you might want to check out. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to keep up to date. If you're not familiar with our organization, Manhattan Graphic Center is a community print shop that supports the learning and practice of fine art printmaking. We provide an affordable, inclusive professional studio and exhibition space, plus we offer classes and other public programs, including artist talks like this one, and we also offer scholarships. Manhattan Graphic Center would like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, the Sherman Foundation, the Pierre and Tana Matisse Foundation, our members and our other donors and friends, all who make our artist talks and other programming possible. My name is Robin Sharon, and I'm joined by my colleague, Anita Cardona. We're both part of the Manhattan Graphic Center's 4-person management team, and we're very excited to welcome Melissa and Katie to our artist talk series. This talk is a little different from what we usually do. Instead of being about an artist's practice, it's about corporate collecting. We'll be doing a Q&A after their presentation, so if you have any questions, leave them in the chat that you see at the bottom of your screen. Okay, Melissa Dallal, I just want to say, is a Manhattan Graphics member, and it was she who suggested this as a topic for her talk, and she also helped make this possible. She is a project manager for interior design at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, where she brings her experience in award-winning hospitality design to the design of healthcare spaces. In her role, Melissa manages art acquisitions for the hospital's 30+ locations throughout the New York tri-state area, working with art consultants and stakeholders, while also spearheading special site-specific commissions. She also ensures that MSK's art collection aligns with the hospital's broader environmental design vision, which is to provide positive patient, staff, and visitor experiences through creating moments of joy, inspiration, and encouragement. Cade Tompkins Projects focuses on advancing and exhibiting contemporary art, featuring work by emerging artists as well as mid-career and established artists in various mediums, including painting, sculpture, printmaking, video, drawing, and installation. Clients range from major museums to new collectors, as well as corporations, hospitals, and seasoned art connoisseurs. She's interested in finding art for clients at all levels of collecting. Works by gallery artists have been placed in collections of the collection of the Museum of Fine Art Boston, Cleveland Museum of Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Yale University Art Gallery, and many others. Corporate collections include Blue Cross, Fidelity Investments, Wellington Management, as well as hospital facilities such as Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, New York, Presbyterian, Women and Infants, Providence, and Hospital for Special Surgery, New York. Cade Tompkins has been a contemporary art dealer for over 30 years. Her gallery opened in September 2009, and to date has featured over 50 exhibitions by represented artists. Tompkins graduated from the Appraisal Studies and Art program at the Rhode Island School of Design. Cade Tompkins Projects has exhibited gallery artists at Master Drawings in New York 2018, 2020, and 2022, EAB Fair, New York, 2006 through 2013, Art in an Ant Airstream during the IFPDA Art Fair, 2016, Spring Break Art Show, New York, Los Angeles, 2016 through 2023, and the upcoming IFPDA Fair 2023. Cade Tompkins is a member of the International Fine Print Dealers Association, that's IFPDA, candidate member of the American Society of Appraisers, ASA, member of Art Table, the National Professional Organization Advancing Leadership of Women in the Visual Arts, and a sustaining member of the Association of Print Scholars, it's APS. Gallery services include curation of corporate and private collections, fine art appraisals, installation, placement, and framing consultation. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Melissa and Katie, who are going to share their screen.
Great, thank you, Robin. I'm going to share my screen. So I'm really honored to be speaking at Manhattan Graphics today. I've been a member there for a number of years, taking screen printing classes, and it's really a pleasure to be speaking to an artist audience, which I don't often get to do, and to show you a little bit about our work at MSK and how artists' work is used in our collection. I started working at MSK about 7 years ago. I have an architecture background, and when I interviewed for the job to be an interior designer there, they told me during the interview, they asked me if I liked going to art fairs. And I mentioned that I liked that very much. And they said, well, part of your job is going to be curating the art collection at our hospital. So that was a very happy thing to learn during my interview. And that's been really one of the great pleasures of working at MSK, to be able to do this work. MSK, for some of you that don't know this, has over 30 locations in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in New Jersey, Long Island, and Westchester. In the past 7 years since I've been there, we've been rapidly expanding, building new regional buildings to serve local communities. We've built ground up buildings in Manhattan and continue to expand. We are working on a 1 million square foot building right now, expanding many of our regional locations. So there's a lot of work. And with all of that work, we, every project, whether it's a staff project, a clinical project, a public space project, every space has an art program associated with it. And so therefore, we're constantly working with different art consultants, different galleries, such as Cade, to furnish art for these spaces. So I'm going to today talk to you about 2 different projects Cade and I worked on together. One is MSK Nassau in Long Island, which is a 120,000 square foot building that was built in 2019, and the MSK Koch Center, which is a 750,000 square foot building that opened in 2020. And to give you a sense of scale, before this talk, I Googled how big the Met Museum is. The Met is 2 million square feet, and we manage over 6 million square feet of spaces with artwork. So it's a lot of art that we're putting in these places. So maybe Katie, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can get back to the presentation.
Thank you, Robin, for your kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. The Manhattan Graphics Center has been an important spot for so many artists, and bringing together the community of printmakers is one of the best assets that you have, because as we know, printmaking is a very collaborative effort, and where artists will create alone in the studio, printmaking usually entails a shop like Manhattan Graphics Center and a space that allows for this exchange of ideas. So it's really a pleasure to be here tonight and see you all and hear from you as well after the presentation. And speaking of art fairs, I don't know if I'm taking away thunder from Melissa, but that's how we met. I was participating in a spring break art show, which is a gypsy art fair and lands in different locations over time. And the fair that was held in an empty office space in Times Square is where Melissa walked in. And I happened to be showing some works by Sophia Khawaja, who is a RISD grad, but Pakistani national living in Dubai. And there was a young couple and they were looking at what I was showing them. And the man said, well, how much are those? And I said, well, they're $1,200. And Melissa zoomed across the room and said, oh, wait, I'm interested. You know, can you tell me, do you have more work in that price range? And it's something that makes me laugh because prints can be affordable and their history is to be affordable. But as we know, things increase in value very rapidly. So at some point, maybe during the talk, we'll talk about budget and all of that. But inherently, prints are an incredible medium, not only for the experimentation of etching and litho and woodcut and sheen collé and monotypes, but the fact that the work can be in multiples and it can be quite affordable, relatively speaking, in the art world. So it's always been a great interest of mine. I am not an artist. I am an art dealer. I'm on the other side of the coin. So I'd love to have Melissa start in and show what we did together.
Yep. So I put this quote on the screen, Katie. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it was really like a wonderful thing to see one day on the MSK Instagram that when we were working on this building that you're seeing a picture of here at the Koch Center, we asked ourselves, it was a collaboration between the MSK design team, Perkins Eastman Architects, iCrave, a number of different consultants worked on this project, including Cade. And the challenge was, you know, how do we create a building that can be an active participant in patient care? And I think the artwork really kind of speaks to that as a member of that team that helped create that experience. So I'm just going to quickly go through some slides just to sort of give you a sense of the types of spaces that we've been building and how the artwork kind of ties into these spaces. And so this is some examples of public spaces at our public waiting areas in our Bergen location and in our Nassau location. Art is used for wayfinding and elevator lobbies. We have these nourishment stations. So it really is pervasive in clinical areas, both in corridors, inside patient rooms, even in a surgery, pre-surgery and post-surgery suite, there's art on the wall. In operating room corridors, you know, it's very important. Our patients actually often walk in to have surgery and then are later wheeled out. So that experience of walking into your surgery, you know, you want to feel calm, you want to feel supported by anything you can find around you. And especially with cancer care, that's one of the times when people are most vulnerable. And so anything we can do to support them through design and art and sort of make the patient experience just a more supportive one for them is important. We have things called infusion mobility zones where people are getting chemotherapy inside these treatment rooms, but then they can walk around and they're encouraged to walk around and be with their families. So art is an important part of that experience. And even in our staff spaces, we like to, you know, energize and inspire our staff. And the top left is a new computational oncology research campus that we recently did, Koch Center, MSK Bergen. We commission art. You'll see a commissioned mural on the bottom right there. So as you can see, it's important for us. The first project I was going to speak about is MSK Nassau, and this is in Uniondale, New York, on the same site as the Nassau Coliseum. And this was a project we worked on with the architecture firm Ewing Cole. And the idea of this building was to think about the clinical space and the waiting areas more like a grand home, a grand modernist home. When we were designing the interiors as well as thinking about the artwork, we wanted to kind of create a residential, homey, maybe hotel-like feel. So what you're seeing here is the lobby when you walk in. What we do with regional buildings is we try to work with local artists specific to the place where the building is. And often we do that through the artwork you see throughout the space, sometimes through special commissions. The artwork you see on the right there is part of 6 24-foot woven tapestries that actually an Argentine artist made for us, but they're all based on local nature preserves around the building. So that was sort of a nice way to make patients feel welcome. And these are at the entries to all the clinical spaces. Katie, maybe you want to sort of jump in and talk about how you thought about artwork for this space.
Well, certainly on this slide, you see a large painting over a dining table. So it extends the idea of this particular project feeling like a house, maybe, you know, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and that people have the freedom to move around and sit at a table with their family members as they may be waiting or using the facility in a different way. And I think it's so inventive of Melissa and her team to come up with this concept. And it was a great pleasure to respond back to it. So here you see a work by Karen Moody Tompkins, who is really looking at astronomy as the main focus of her work. And although we're not up close to it, it has a lot of detail that looks like star matter. And I love the idea of art being a respite from the otherwise more intense and perhaps anxiety-filled moments that one would have in a hospital. And then here's another of the wonderful tapestries. Of course, you can see that it's a scene in Long Island on a beach that's very familiar to the audience coming in. So the idea of water was used throughout the project. And again, this is on the second floor, feeling very kind of cozy and home-like before you see a row of infusion rooms, which each have a work of art. And on the right is an infusion room. So we had to think about scale a lot. And also, this one is a great slide to show that you know, it's hung higher than it would normally be in a gallery setting or in an exhibition in a gallery or in your living room because of heads being, you know, sitting at that space. So a lot of things are taken in really to focus on the comfort and the safety of patients. So that's just interesting to note, whereas a piece that's on the right is, you know, perhaps more at a true center line, but we have to consider the patient and the doctors and all the nurses using the space first. Of course, going along the theme of what's happening around the building, that this part of Long Island was also known for automobile manufacturing as well as aerospace manufacturing. So there are a lot of planes and cars, and often it's to balance out what happens in hospital collections when they become abstract and flower based. You know, we need other things, and we need things for both sensibilities of male and female. What do you like to look at? What are hobbies? What are pleasurable things that you think about? Maybe it's your Corvette. You know, we want to touch upon those emotive feelings in the art. And this piece by Jonathan Bonner is a really playful piece. It's a word-based, but it's based on the alphabet. And this leads into the corridor that's used by the doctors and nurses to go into their office area. So, you know, it's a brain teaser. It's colorful and fun, but there's substance behind it. Every artist that we use in their work. Some are very well known, like Ana Maria Hernandez on the left, fantastic installation artist. Her work is over the top. This is a multiple textured piece. And then on the right, Alison Bianco, again, something very fun. It's a corner piece with a flamingo in it. But we're thinking about what Melissa and her team did with the wall texture, you know, and trying to play off of it. And I can't take any, you know, I can't say that we planned everything, because some things just sort of come together at the end. Installation is its own art into itself. So it's fun to be able to have the flexibility to move around and respond to textures, rug, color, light, and to see what's going on. After a lot of planning, things change.
And then recently, I would say for the past couple of years, we've tried to give patients a way to move through the collection by doing these digital art walks. And so this is on the website, and there's sort of signs throughout the building that can tell you how to access this. And it lets you go through sort of a selected pathway that we've created, and just to learn more about the artists with statements that the artists themselves have written for us, which is really nice and makes it more personal. The next project is the David H. Koch Center, which is in Manhattan on 74th Street and the East River. And this was a ground up project for us, built with Perkins Eastman, Ennead, iCrave, as I mentioned before. So this was like, you know, an opportunity that we don't usually have to work on something that's this large, 22 floors, 750,000 square feet. It's mostly an outpatient building with, I think, over 600 treatment rooms in it. It has one inpatient floor. It has 3 staff floors at the top of the building. So there's a number of uses throughout, and artwork was definitely an important component. And this was a commissioned artwork by the Brazilian artist Sandra Cinto, you see here in the lobby. And when we were first working on this project and were sent out an RFP for art consultants and galleries to give us their ideas and pitch for this, Cade's came back, and Cade and I are both from New York, grew up in New York, both went to all girls schools here. So we connected on that front originally, and Cade came back with a proposal themed around I Love New York and that iconic Milton Glaser logo. So Cade, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you conceived of that for the building.
Right. Well, again, the placement of the building is always a first consideration, and to turn to the artistic community in New York was really important to everyone on the team. And then to have this I Love New York theme seemed really fitting, because the idea of Milton Glaser, you know, making this incredible drawing, which is in the Museum of Modern Art collection, and the way he made it was on the way to the Board of Tourism in 1978 to pitch his idea, because New York was really in bad shape at that moment, and came up with I Love New York with a crayon drawing on a scrap of paper in the taxi on his way to the meeting. And that was the first thing I related to, because his way of working was not mapping everything out in advance. It was very intuitive and kind of last minute, considering what he was doing. And he knew that New York was central to the campaign. And I, in turn, took that one small, modest drawing and built around it for the idea of I Love New York. And also, the word love it's a tricky word, but it's quite important, especially in a situation like a cancer hospital, and how you use that word and how you take care of people and how the doctors take care of the patients and the patient's family takes care of them. There's a lot of love, but it's a hard thing to put into a corporate situation because there's that moment of like, what? But because Milton did it, I could then take it and dissect it and bring it into all the art pieces, where it filtered in really gently and really purposefully. The other themes, just really briefly, of course, were on the East River. So water was really, really important, and water as a healing element, of course, that's a natural. And you'll see in the slides that there's 2 or 3 different types of floors that we responded back to. One is restoration, one is activation. So the colors shift, the types of work shift, fun and playful on the activation floors, calm and restorative on the restoration floors.
I can kind of explain how that works in the building. So this was the second building where we give patients a sort of RTLS badge that lets us locate them in the building, so they don't have to sit and wait in front of their particular clinics for their appointment. They can move around the building, and either we'll actually come find you when your appointment is, or we'll send you a text message. So this allows people to kind of have an experience of their choice in the building, and giving back control to patients is really important. So patients, if they're with their families and want to have like a communal meal, if they want to go to a yoga class, if they want to do a cooking demo, if they want a very calm library-like setting, like you'll see in this slide here, these 3 types of floors alternate throughout the building. And we asked Cade, with the artworks that she was curating, to really respond to these different types of spaces. So it's sort of the mood of the artwork responds to the mood of these types of waiting floors. And what we did also at the beginning of this project, when we were selecting artworks, we involved a committee of over 40 stakeholders, who included hospital leadership, people who are going to be working in the building, patients, the design staff. So we really had a diverse group, and Cade presented thousands of artworks to us to introduce us to different artists, to talk about what their work was about. And we all got to kind of, using a voting app, got to vote on the artists that we liked. And sort of the idea behind that was to give the people who were eventually going to be working in the building a sense of ownership of the collection, and ownership over the works that were going to be in the collection. So that was really a fascinating project, because all sorts of things came up during that discussion about people's assumptions about what art should be in the building, whether we should feature the human body or not. It was really an amazing process. So here you'll see, this is another one of the waiting areas where we have a New York themed artwork here. This is one of the, from visiting the building multiple times, a lot of people really, I put this in just so you can get a sense of like, that the human figure, you don't often see that in hospital settings, because people are scared about what patients' reactions might be if they're feeling not whole about their body. But people actually felt like with 1,250 works of art, it would be really strange not to see the human figure. And then once we've been, seeing how people respond, people really love, I think, respond best to the pieces that do have the human figure in them. So Cade, maybe you can talk about this, like yes, corridors and this type of work.
Sure. So obviously with works on paper, I was very aware of the light source and what was coming in, and we placed paintings and sculpture closer to these beautiful windows that looked out over the East River, and then interior corridors were more appropriate for prints and works on paper because the light situation. And what we're seeing on the left and the right are Four Seasons by the fantastic printmaker that many of you may know personally is Andrew Raftery. who is a teacher, a scholar, and an amazing engraver. And we were lucky enough to have these four, letterpress prints, if you can believe it, that huge letterpress that he prints here in Providence, and they're done as tiles and then put together like wallpaper. But instead of making it wallpaper, we framed each season. So this was a fantastic piece for the collection and for people to enjoy. And we went big scale. Ellen Weeder, wonderful also, does wonderful monotypes and prints. And so again, the long corridor stretches where we were conscious of people walking and finding their way, and also having something joyous and colorful to look at along the way. And I'm really interested in the cross-section of science and art, and I think these play to it. You get sort of these geodome structures and interesting objects that relate to science, but aren't necessarily depicting science. So,
and I think it's also important to point out that the collection artists are really range from being emerging artists, mid-career artists, senior artists. We have a lot of women artists. The whole idea was also around New York-based artists. So we really sort of have a diverse group, which we like to have. And then I mentioned we have hundreds of treatment rooms, and they're kind of color-coded by what clinic they are. So Katie, maybe you want to talk about your strategy for commissioning art for these rooms.
Right, because of the sheer numbers and because of the budget restraint, in order to make both things happen, I engaged several artists to create work specifically for the two different types of exam rooms. One is an exam room, blue walls. That's a lively, kind of more energetic room. You're only in there for a short amount of time. And the green was part of the infusion room. And we separated out the artists very distinctly. We did not mix the group of artists in infusion and the group of artists in exam were totally different. But within those two hubs of pools of artists, we commissioned usually around 8 to 10 pieces by one artist, size specific, collage, predominantly some drawings. And if they were prints, they were monotypes, because we did not repeat one work of art over 1,250 works of art. There's no lazy addition. Let's put this on every floor. Hotel style, one in every room situation. Every work is unique. So although we used a lot of prints, I was not repeating anywhere throughout the building, doubling up of an edition. So I did use artists in sort of groups in terms of their work, but not the same work itself.
Yeah, and what I noticed is really nice is sometimes in a public waiting area, there'll be a large original painting by an artist, but then when you get into the clinical spaces, there'll be some prints by them too. So you'll see that artist as you move your way through the building. We have a large sculpture on the wall on our cafeteria floor, and then we have some prints by them on other floors. This is the infusion mobility zone that I was just talking about on our other project, where patients can come outside of their room. We encourage them to and sort of move around and be with friends and family. These are the infusion rooms. This is outside our inpatient floor. So we have one inpatient floor in the building. This is the corridor in our inpatient unit with the rooms on the left, and you'll see artwork on the walls on the right. So, we warmed it up with wood and artwork, and John Thompson, to thank.
Just saw Yvonne Yeah.
And then we have a cafeteria floor where we have some paintings, plein air paintings of a koi pond. And then we actually have this digital koi pond in the middle of that space, which was another form of artwork where it's a responsive experience, and koi are sort of swimming through this digital koi pond and respond to touch and send messages to you. So a nice other type of artwork that we used. We also used in all the elevator lobbies, art was really used as wayfinding because we really have these iconic identifiable artworks. And so you know what floor you come to by the artwork that you see there. This is a staff floor in the building. So Cade, if you want to speak about this staff, what you were thinking about when doing staff art.
Yes, and it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, connected to teaching, education, and research on this floor. So you can see the walls are, wood and blue and a different use than the patient floor. So I was thinking about the crossover of science and art, especially in the prior image, and then on this image too. We have low relief sculpture here that is, looks like some sort of object that, space object, and how it connects to the idea of opening up minds for research. And then back to the terrace.
Yeah, and then on the 6th floor, where we also have our cafe space, we have an outdoor terrace, and we worked with a sculptor named Kim Dickey there, who created these beautiful terracotta clad aluminum sculptures that are sort of playful garden follies, and they're animals, and there's these sort of abstract sculptures throughout the terrace as you walk around. So we really had sort of a wide range of different types of work in the space. And I thought I'd conclude by showing this one room. We have multiples of this room on the ground floor and on the lower level where you exit. And the idea was that if you come out of your time at MSK and you may have had an emotional experience, received news that you need to process, you just want some privacy. And so our team kind of came up with this idea of a space that you can do that before sort of exiting to the outside world. So these rooms are sort of your only kind of like private zone that anyone can come to just to have a moment of respite, to be with their loved ones and kind of make that transition into the world again after being at our building. So this is sort of a lovely kind of almost like a sacred space for us in the building, supported, as you can see, by a lovely piece of art. And just to kind of wrap up, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what's going on sort of future facing when it comes to art and healthcare. And right now there's a lot of people talking about neuroaesthetics. And there's an organization at Johns Hopkins that's looking to have arts recognized and integrated as a core part of mainstream medicine and public health. And the way that they're doing this is that they're funding research at many hospitals across the country about how art and the arts, actually measuring how the arts affect patients. And so once they gather all this research over the next couple of years, their hope is that they can sort of publicly garner support that arts be mandated in healthcare settings. So that's a really interesting frontier right now. So these are just some books that sort of speak to that. And the second one is a white paper that speaks to that might be interesting. I know we're looking to just increase the diversity and the representation of artists, that we have people from diverse communities. We collect 50% of the artwork we collect are from underrepresented artists. I know we were looking at doing audio tours, catalogs of our artwork, doing artist talks on site, post-occupancy studies with sort of learning what people think about the artwork in the building. So that's kind of what's, I think, ahead for art and healthcare. And I think a lot of you are artists and maybe wondering how you can get your work into these types of collections, and you're welcome to contact us and maybe even speak to the galleries you visit and ask them if they work with hospitals. We work with many galleries throughout New York. So you would be, and check us out on our Instagrams. We're constantly posting things that we're doing arts-wise. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That was was really pretty beyond interesting. It was kind of I think clarifying something that can be very opaque to artists and maybe to the public also, like how these decisions are made, and also how you interface with artists to find this work. So a great big thank you to Melissa and Katie. We'd like to take questions now. So if you have any, you can put them in the chat. We can ask these questions. You can direct them to either Melissa or Katie or both. Or, if you like, if you prefer to ask your question out loud, you can unmute and just ask. So, so does anyone have any questions? No questions? Nobody has any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. Great, thank you.
You mentioned that we could just contact you if we're interested in you seeing our work. So should we send you a note on Instagram and you can look at our work on Instagram?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions? This is a great opportunity if you have a question to ask. Because as I said, I don't think a lot of us really have a lot of insight into how this process works. So
I actually have a question.
okay.
Frequently in hospital settings, and maybe this is old-fashioned, but some artwork seems to be there from donations. Or, having been left to the hospital by an estate or a family or whatever the case might be. In the work that you do, obviously you have a rather large budget to purchase art for these spaces. Do you ever get donations as well, or is this all art that's been purchased?
When I came to MSK, we were sort of wrapping up the practice of accepting donations just because it was so overwhelming. And most of the work in the older buildings actually is work that has been donated from our hospitals been around since 1850. So you can imagine how much artwork has been donated over the years. So, but we decided that with our newer projects, at least over the past, like I would say 10 years or 12 years or so, that that to kind of match the level of design and patient experience we were looking to have, that really newer artworks would be more appropriate. But we do have a legacy, and in our older buildings we have many lovely artworks that have been donated and curate that for those older buildings too.
So you do both,
We do both, but
Yeah.
with once we're renovating or doing a new
Sure.
project, but we if it's something that we don't want to let go of, we'll try to reuse it somehow or integrate it.
Sure. Thank you.
And our budgets aren't unlimited. Katie has had to work with some very tough budgets and be very creative when it comes to figuring out ways to get us the best work possible, because certainly, like, everyone's eye is always on the art budget, and that we're being, we can't spend money on art. We have to be spending money on more concrete things like patient care. And so we're always the ones that get left with like the least amount of money at the end. But we try to do our best with it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see, there's a couple of questions in the chat. There's one from David. I hope I'm not going to mispronounce your name, Sia. You mentioned the avoidance of people generally as a subject matter as an assumption that you decided to test out and give feedback from which generated positive feedback. What sort of works of art would be a bad idea for a hospital healthcare setting? Was there some taboos you were trying to avoid, or found that they were surprisingly not working well for healthcare settings?
I think, like, historically, people have been, obviously afraid of things that maybe look like heaven, or parts of bodies, or things that are red, or things like that. But I think, like, with more contemporary art, I feel like you're very open right now to what's possible. So I think people maybe aren't being set off in the ways that maybe they were in the past, or people just have a broader vocabulary for understanding things.
I could also add just an incidental story to explain how deeply the design team is thinking about just this. So my very first project with Melissa was bone marrow transplant floor, which is an intense place for anyone to be. And I was getting direction, no red, and because it associates with blood. However, like a lot of art, it's really a perception of what the art is. And we were hanging pieces in the patient rooms pre-COVID. And there was a wonderful South American woman, and she had just come out of surgery. And she said, "Do I have a choice of what's in the room?" And I said, 100%. I have 3 that you can choose from. And I have one here, and I have 2 others that I was going to hang. And this is very unusual. So I said, yes. And she said, "Well, I really like red." And I was like, "I have red. I have red for you." So we brought it back, and she said, "That's lovely. I love it." So the point is, there's a lot of discussion around it, and conscious discussion around it, and thoughtful discussion around it. But at the end of the day, there's hundreds of different reactions to art, and that's what makes art so important and necessary in a hospital. So I guess the answer is we tried to be careful, but at the same time, there's going to be so many different reactions to so many different pieces of work that you accept it all.
So now we have a question from Janice McDonald. Are there any new large health-related projects on the horizon?
On MSK's end, we are expanding all of our regional buildings right now. There's a need for extra imaging centers, as well as infusion areas. So a lot of our buildings are expanding. We're building a 1 million square foot inpatient tower now in Manhattan, right below our new hospital, below our old hospital, our main campus. So there's a lot of work going on right now.
And we have a question from Gabriel Payless. I think you touched on this, Katie, but Can you comment on archival concerns, light damage, et cetera, for various medium, paper, textiles, other in these spaces?
I'm always thinking about it because to be a curator is, of course, many of you know from the Latin word curare, which means to take care of. And so taking care of the art long-term is very important, because I wouldn't want to be the one to come back 10 years later and see a woodcut completely faded that's been well too exposed to light. So yes, we're thinking about that. However, the nature of art is oil paintings are more expensive than prints. So we try to figure out how we're going to work around situations that are light filled, because it calls for a sculpture, it calls for oil painting, whereas interior hallways is safer for works on paper.
Then we have a question from Oriane Stender. When you purchase artist works for the hospital, do you generally do the framing on your end, or do you want the artist to do the framing?
Usually we ask the art consultant or gallery to handle the framing, but not the artist.
Not the artist. I guess that kind of makes sense too, because you would want things to look like uniform, and if artists did their own framing, it would be kind of like a hodgepodge. And then also, I guess you would want things to be framed in an archival manner, so that way that would be a concern also. Okay, so does anyone else have a question you'd like to ask? Let's see, Susan Weinberg said, this is a comment I have to run, great presentation, thank you. Anyone else would like to ask a question? Make a comment? Just have another thank you, very informative. And I guess no more questions. Okay, so I want to thank you, Melissa and Katie. This was a really great talk, and I found it very enlightening and informative, so I hope everyone else did also. We also want to thank everyone who's joined us. Just as a reminder, you can visit our website at manhattangraphiccenter.org. You'll also be able to sign up for future talks and see our other events and classes, and join our mailing list. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to keep up to date. Also, I just want to say that recording of this talk will be posted to our YouTube channel fairly soon. And also, one other thing, if you are in our neighborhood, we currently have a beautiful exhibit up in our gallery space called Undone. It's a Manhattan Graphic Center portfolio from 2014, and it's on view now in our space till the end of June. So with that, I'm going to say thanks, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Everyone.